The photo hit me harder than any punch could. My daughter, Lila, stood in a white gown, holding hands with a man beneath an arch of roses. The caption read, "Family complete." My hands shook so badly I dropped my phone. There were smiles, champagne, and her new in-laws. Everyone but me. My name is Bree Carter. I'm 67 years old, and I found out about my only child's wedding on Facebook. But what they didn't know was this story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because betrayal doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes, it comes wrapped in lace and smiles, hidden behind perfect pictures and polite captions. For me, it came on a Tuesday morning, between my first sip of coffee and the sound of my phone hitting the floor. That moment split my life clean in two, the woman I had been, and the woman I was about to become. I was 14 when I first smelled bleach and learned what survival really meant. The house on Peachtree Avenue smelled like lemon polish and old secrets. I scrubbed floors that gleamed brighter than anything I'd ever owned. My hands cracked from soap. My knees burned. But when I looked at my reflection in that polished marble, I told myself, this is just the start. By 17, I was pregnant. But when I looked at my reflection in that polished marble, I remember sitting on the clinic's cold bench, the nurse's voice soft but the world around me hard. My mother had already passed. There was no one to call. So, I named my baby girl Lila Light, because she was the only bright thing in my life that wasn't borrowed or broken. The first year was a blur of night shifts, canned soup, and borrowed diapers. I cleaned 2 houses by day and folded laundry for a motel by night. I'd hum lullabies into the steam of the dryer just to keep myself from crying. Lila would smile up at me from her crib, her tiny fingers curling around mine like she already knew I needed her to hold on. I sold my wedding ring for $200 and my mama's patch of land in Macon for $900. That money went straight into Lila's school fund. People said I was crazy, she's just a baby. Bree, think about yourself. But I couldn't. Thinking about myself felt like a luxury for people who had someone else to catch them. I didn't. When Lila turned 6, she brought home her first report card straight A's. I taped it to the fridge with the same pride other mothers saved for diplomas. That night, she asked, "Mama, am I like the rich kids you clean for?" I smiled, even though it hurt. "No, baby," I said, "you're better. You earn what they're handed." I said, "But that sentence would haunt both of us." I said, "Stitched together by overtime and overtime again." By the time she was 16, Lila had a sweet 16 party that looked like something out of a catalog. I made every cupcake, blew every balloon, paid every cent. When she opened the letter from me, a handwritten note that said, "You'll always be my forever girl," she cried. She hugged me so tight I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd already made it. But then came the cracks. It started when she got her first serious boyfriend, a boy named Patrick Wentworth. Tall, charming, polite in that way that felt rehearsed. His parents, Malcolm and Vivian, lived in a house with marble steps and glass walls that reflected back the kind of people they liked to see. The first time I met them, Vivian extended her hand like she was offering me something fragile. Her smile was thin, perfectly rehearsed. "What a quaint little life you must have," she said after I told her I cleaned houses. I smiled back. "Quaint keeps the lights on." Patrick laughed politely. But Lila's eyes darted down to her plate. That was the first time I saw her ashamed of me, and she didn't even realize she'd shown it. I didn't say anything that night. But when I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at my reflection in the window. My hands still smelled faintly of bleach. I wondered if Vivian could smell it too. By Lila's college graduation, I'd already learned to take my seat at the back. I clapped until my palms stung. But she never looked up. When she tossed her cap into the air, I cheered louder than anyone else, but when I went to hug her afterward, she said, "Mama, can you wait a sec? Patrick's parents want photos first." I waited. But the photos never included me. I didn't know it back then. But that would matter later. She moved into Patrick's condo after graduation. I helped her pack, folded her dresses, labeled her boxes, even paid for the U-Haul deposit. When she handed me back the key to our little South Atlanta house, I told myself it was fine. Children are supposed to leave. It's how it's meant to be. But it wasn't the leaving that broke me. It was the erasing. Her texts grew shorter, visits rarer, work's crazy. She'd say, "Patrick's parents have plans." Then one Christmas Eve, she called to say she couldn't make it. "We promised the Wentworths," she explained, her voice soft but distant. I stared at the small dinner table, 2 plates, one empty, and felt something collapse quietly inside me. I put her favorite peach cobbler in the fridge. It's untouched. Later that night, as the TV blinked between channels, I whispered to the empty room, "She'll come around." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. The silence between us was growing teeth. I started writing everything down, dates, small hurts, things I didn't want to forget. December 24th. Dinner for 2. Only me ate. It wasn't revenge. It was record-keeping, proof that I hadn't imagined being left behind. I didn't know it at the time, but that little red notebook would become my armor. By the time Lila turned 28, I'd watched her morph into someone I hardly recognized. Her smile was sharper. By the time Lila turned 28, she called me Bree once at a restaurant, slipped out like she forgot who I was. "Oh, sorry, Mama." She called me Bree once at a restaurant, slipped out like she forgot who I was. Her laughter shorter. I brushed it off. But later that night, I lay awake and thought, maybe she didn't forget. Maybe she just preferred the distance. And then, one Tuesday morning, I scrolled past the photo that changed everything. White dress, veil, a caption that said, "Family complete." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. My reflection in the glass looked hollow, like someone who'd spent her whole life saving for a seat at a table that never planned to have her. I wanted to scream, but all that came out was silence, a silence that felt heavier than grief. I didn't cry that day. I wrote, Tuesday. I didn't cry that day. I wrote, 12 a.m. No call. No invite. No mother. Then I underlined it. Twice. And as I put the pen down, I knew something had shifted. Not in her. In me. That was the morning I stopped waiting to be chosen. After that morning, the house felt quieter than ever. Not the soft kind of quiet that comforts you, but the hollow kind, where even the clock ticks sound like they're judging you. I'd lived in that little South Atlanta house for 34 years. Every corner held a version of me. The young mother warming formula on a flickering stove. The woman ironing uniforms at 2 a.m. The mother who waited by the window for headlights that never came. I sat in my armchair and stared at the framed photo of Lila at 6 years old, missing front teeth, chocolate on her chin, and that smile that used to melt every hard edge I had. I whispered to the picture, "You wouldn't have done this." But she already had. Days passed like dust. The women I cleaned for still left notes. "Please scrub behind the fridge. Use lemon polish, not wax." Their world kept spinning. Mine didn't. It was Ruth, my next-door neighbor, who first noticed something was off. She knocked on my door one evening, holding her usual glass of iced tea and that no-nonsense stare that could cut steel. "You've been sitting in the dark." "Bree," she said, "that's not who you are." "I'm fine." I lied. Ruth leaned closer. "Fine people don't talk to picture frames." She sat across from me and waited. Eventually, I told her everything: the Facebook post, the caption, the silence. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she sighed and said, "You raised that girl with too much giving and not enough boundaries." I wanted to argue, but she wasn't wrong. A few days later, Ruth slid a small notebook across my table. "Start writing. Everything you remember, good or bad. And if you're going to rebuild your life, start with numbers, not tears. Get your finances straight." She introduced me to Darius Cole, a financial advisor at the local community bank. Darius was patient, kind, with a voice that could calm a storm. He looked at my faded bank statements and said, "You've done more with less than most people do with plenty. But you need a plan." "Ms. Carter." So, I made one. I set up a separate savings account, automated small transfers, and learned words like interest yield and living trust. Every Friday, I'd walk to the bank, deposit $20, and feel like I was planting seeds. It wasn't about the money. It was about reclaiming control. But even as I started to heal, reminders of Leela lingered. Her calls came sporadically short, polite, distant. Once, she mentioned Patrick's parents were planning an anniversary party. They want it elegant, she said. Simple but refined. I laughed softly. "Like me." Then, I laughed softly. "Like me." "Mama?" I did. She meant not like me. One Sunday, she finally invited me to dinner at their home in Buckhead. I ironed my best blouse, shined my shoes, and baked her favorite peach cobbler. When I arrived, Vivian greeted me at the door in pearls and a linen dress that whispered money. "Mrs. Carter," she said with that soft blade of a smile. "How lovely you could come." Her house smelled like rosemary and control. I handed her the cobbler. She looked at it as if I'd brought her something mildly radioactive. "How charming," she said. Dinner was a study in polite cruelty. Vivian asked about my work with a tone that made every word sound like a test. Patrick nodded absently while scrolling his phone. Lila tried to fill the silence, but I could see the tension in her jaw. When dessert came, Vivian set my cobbler on the table. "It's an Tibes de day. We're watching our sugar," she said sweetly. I smiled back. "That's all right. More for me." Patrick chuckled under his breath. More for me. It was small, that night. As I rode the bus home, I pressed my hand against the cobbler dish in my lap. Still warm. Still mine. I didn't cry. I wrote, "Dinner at Oda." Vivian said charming 3 times. Each time meant something smaller. The next few months blurred together, holidays skipped. Invitations lost. Each time meant something smaller. The next few months blurred together, holidays skipped. The family-only Christmas Eve dinner. I waited by the phone that night. Even though I told myself I wouldn't, it never rang. Instead, at 10 p.m., I got a text. "Merry Christmas. Mama. Love you. Busy here. Promise we'll celebrate soon." I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen. Then I typed back, "Promise we'll celebrate soon. Baby." But what I meant was goodbye. After that, I started preparing for a different kind of life. I met with Harold Kim, a quiet man with kind eyes who'd been Aunt May's lawyer. He explained how to create a conditional trust. "It's not about punishment," he said. It's about structure. Boundaries that teach even after you're gone. I nodded slowly. I don't want to hurt her. I just want her to see me. He looked at me for a long time before replying. Then let her look when she's ready. Not when she's comfortable. That night, I started what I called my plan for independence. I budgeted, listed every possession, and drafted my will. I even started looking at new apartments, quiet ones. Magnolia Ridge Indicator was one of those places. Listed every possession. Clean, modest, with garden courtyards and the sound of jazz drifting from the community center on Friday nights. When I toured it, I saw a woman watering plants on her balcony, smiling to herself. Then let her look when she's ready. I imagined being that kind of woman, content in her own space, not waiting for anyone to knock. So, I moved, quietly. No announcement, no explanations. When Lila finally noticed 2 months later, she showed up at Magnolia Ridge unannounced. She looked shocked to see the small, sunlit apartment with its tiny balcony and single armchair. "Mama," she said, frowning. "You live here." "I do," I answered. "And I like it." "But you didn't tell me." "We could have helped." "I didn't need help," I said, folding a dish towel. "Just peace." She blinked. "Are you angry?" I turned to face her. "I'm not angry. I'm free." That silence between us lasted long enough for me to hear the wind chime outside the balcony. I didn't know it then. But those 4 words would become the end of one life and the start of another. She left that day confused, half defensive, half scared. But I knew she'd remember that line. One day, half scared, the way all truths eventually do. I wrote it in my notebook that night. I'm not angry. I'm free. Then I underlined it. And for the first time in decades, I slept without waiting for the phone to ring. The thing about silence is it doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it just means the storm hasn't reached you yet. After moving to Magnolia Ridge, I built a routine. Morning walks, coffee on the balcony, cleaning 2 houses a week instead of 5. I'd nod to the neighbors, smile at the kids who played tag in the courtyard, and pretend that was enough. For a while, it was. Then one Sunday, while I was trimming the mint by the window, a car I recognized too well pulled into the parking lot. White Lexus, chrome shining like new money. Lila stepped out in heels too high for the gravel. Sunglasses on. A husband behind her like a prop. She didn't call before visiting. Of course she didn't. "Wow," she said, looking around. "This place is cute." Cute? That word again. The word people use when they mean small. I offered them coffee. She said, "We're fine." Patrick just stood there, checking his phone. "I just wanted to see where you've been living," she said. "You didn't even tell me you were moving." "I didn't think you'd want the details," I replied. "Mama, that's not fair." I smiled. "Fair's a tricky word coming from you, Lila." I smiled. Patrick cleared his throat. "We've got dinner plans," Lila said. "You always do," I said. She hesitated by the door. "You know, the Wentworths have been asking about you. They think you might feel left out." I nodded slowly. That's kind of them to notice. It's new. She didn't reply, just hugged me stiffly and left. After the door closed, I looked around my tiny apartment. The air smelled of lavender polish and quiet triumph. For the first time in years, her visit hadn't shaken me. It had clarified me. That same week, I got a letter from Harold Kim. He'd finalized my living trust. The document felt heavier than its pages should have been. A declaration, I am still the author of my own life. Vivian, however, wasn't done with me. A few days later, she called. Her voice was velvet with thorns. Bernice, dear, Lila mentioned your new situation. I just wanted to make sure everything's being managed properly. You know, older folks sometimes get taken advantage of. I let her talk. When she finally paused, I said, "You're right. They do. Usually by people who smile while they're doing it. You're right. I beg your pardon. I wasn't asking for it," I said. Then I hung up. It felt good. Sharp. Clean. Like cutting away dead wood. But peace didn't last. Christmas came again, and I knew better than to expect anything. Still, hope is a stubborn thing. It lingers where it's not wanted. I baked ginger cookies, half out of habit. As they cooled, I checked my phone. Nothing. At 8:47 p.m., a notification pinged. Facebook again. Lila Wentworth tagged in Wentworth Family Christmas. A long table of polished silver. Everyone laughing. Patrick's arm around her waist. The caption read, "Tradition continues with family." I scrolled through the photos. Not one picture of me. Not one sign I'd ever existed. My fingers hovered over the comment box, but I didn't type a thing. Then I shut off the phone and wrote in my notebook. My fingers hovered over the comment box. Not one sign I'd ever existed. That was the night I decided to take Aunt May's advice. Live for yourself, she'd said. They've already chosen themselves. So, I started small. A dance class at the Magnolia Ridge Community Center. Lionel Brooks, the instructor, was 76, with a grin like he'd seen every heartbreak and turned it into rhythm. "You're late," he said my first day, tapping his cane. "Good. That means you've got something worth arriving for." The first few weeks, I stumbled. But one afternoon, as the sunlight hit the polished floor and the music swelled, I realized I was smiling without permission. Then came Lila's phone call. "Mama, we're doing a charity gala next month. I think it'd be nice if you came. People would love to meet you." "Meet me or measure me?" I asked. She exhaled sharply. "Why do you always twist things?" "I'm trying to include you." Include? Another careful word. Inclusion without belonging. Still, I went. The gala was held at the Wentworth's Country Club, a place so sterile it smelled like fear of fingerprints. I wore my gray dress. Simple and pressed. Vivian spotted me first. "Oh," she said, eyes widening. "You came. Wouldn't miss it." I replied. Lila floated through the room like she belonged to it. I stood near the edge, glass of water in hand, pretending not to see how guests looked through me. One woman whispered, "Is that the help?" And Lila's cheeks flushed red. After the event, she cornered me outside by the valet line. "Mama, you embarrassed me." I blinked. "By existing. That's not what I meant." "Then say what you meant." Her eyes filled with tears. "I just wanted tonight to go smoothly." "It did," I said softly. "For you." She didn't answer, just turned away, her dress catching the light like a warning. When I got home that night, I wrote, "Sometimes love is just another word for erasure. They call it care. They mean control. I didn't know it yet. But that was the last time I'd let her define me." A week after the gala, the phone rang again. It was Lila. Her voice strained like she'd been practicing calm. "Mama, I think we need to talk." I almost said no. But curiosity is a hard habit to break. We met at a cafe halfway between her Buckhead condo and my apartment. When she walked in, She looked every bit the brand manager. She'd become sleek hair, nitrile dress. When she walked in, she didn't even sit before starting. Patrick's parents think you're upset. They just want to be sure you're okay. I stirred my tea slowly. I'm fine. Tell them not to worry about me. I'm not in their family. Remember. Her jaw tightened. Mama, why do you have to make everything sound like an attack? Because pretending it isn't one never stopped the bruising. I said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hiss of the espresso machine filled the silence. Then she sighed. You know, Vivian was right. You do hold grudges. I set my cup down. Grudges are when you can forget but choose not to. I remember because it's the only proof I existed. That hit her. I saw it in the way her shoulders slumped before she masked it with a smile. You always make everything so heavy. And you make everything so light it floats away. I said. She blinked, stood, and walked out without another word. That night, I sat by my window as rain slid down the glass. For the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt grief's quieter cousin acceptance. 2 months passed before I heard from her again. This time, she called crying, Mama, can you believe it? Patrick's firm is downsizing. He might lose his job. I listened. I offered what comfort I could. But inside, I wondered if life was finally giving her a mirror. A week later, she showed up again and announced. No makeup, no smile, just exhaustion. She dropped a folder onto my table. I need your help. Patrick's parents think we should refinance the condo. Maybe sell your house to help cover. I laughed. Patrick's parents think we should refinance the condo. A sharp, my house. The one you said was too small to visit. I didn't mean, Lila. I interrupted, my voice low. You can't erase me for years and then come asking for what I built alone. Her eyes filled with tears. You don't understand how much pressure. I understand perfectly. I said, you don't understand how much pressure. Maybe sell your house to help cover. She left soon after, slamming the door. The echo rang in my chest, not as pain, but as punctuation. That night, I opened my red notebook and wrote in neat, deliberate lines. She will learn, not by my voice, but by silence. You can't erase me for years and then come asking for what I built alone. Deliberate lines, old linens, even the cobbler dish that had carried more heartbreak than sugar. When I handed it to my neighbor Tasha, she frowned. You're not dying. Are you? I smiled. No, just cleaning house. Inside or out. Both. I said. Then came the phone call from Harold Kim. Bree. The paperwork's ready. You sure about these conditions? I am. I said, if she wants what I leave, she'll have to earn it. He hesitated. It's a hard lesson. It's the only one left. Meanwhile, Lila's perfect life began to fray. Patrick's job loss made headlines in small circles. Vivian called me again, her voice wrapped in fake sympathy. It must be hard watching Lila struggle. Dear, you could help her. You know, I am, I said, just not the way you mean. She didn't like that answer. I could hear the frost crackle in her silence before she hung up. Weeks later, I ran into Lila outside the grocery store. I could hear the frost crackle in her silence before she hung up. Her eyes shadowed. She looked thinner. Mama, I'm sorry about before. Everything's just been hard. I know, I said softly. Hard makes people honest. She looked down at her hands. Can I come by soon? Maybe dinner. You can, I said. Just call first. Her lips parted. Remembering? The rule she'd once given me. The one she thought I'd forget. I could see it hit her the reversal. That night, I made tea and watched the city lights flicker. My notebook lay open beside me. On the last page, I wrote, "Tomorrow. I'll stop waiting. Let love return if it chooses. But my door will only open for truth." The next morning, sunlight hit my windows in thin, gold lines. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, stillness that wasn't loneliness. What I didn't know was that fate had its own timing. The next knock on my door wouldn't be from Lila. It would be from the past itself, dressed in designer clothes and trembling with regret. The day it happened, Atlanta wore its favorite disguise, soft drizzle. Silver light, and just enough wind to make the cafe signs swing like questions waiting for answers. I'd chosen Pecan and Porch, a corner cafe across from the park. The kind of place where the coffee tastes faintly of burnt sugar and the chairs creak like they remember every argument. I was sitting by the window with my notebook when I saw her. Lila. Her umbrella was black, her coat too thin for the weather. Patrick trailed behind her. Face unreadable. The expression of a man who wanted to be anywhere else. They spotted me instantly. "Mama," she said, shaking off rain as she sat. "Thanks for meeting us." I closed my notebook, keeping my finger between the pages. "You said it was important." "It is," she said. "Patrick and I have been talking. We know things have been strained, but we don't want this distance anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the distance you built?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Please don't make this harder. You said it was important. We came because we heard about your new trust. And well, we just don't want you making any big decisions without us. Families should plan together." There it was. The real reason, not reconciliation calculation. I leaned back, letting the cafe's low jazz hum fill the silence. Families. I repeated. Families. That's a word you only remember when there's paperwork. Uncomfortable. We just want to make sure you're protected. I am. I said, "More than you think." Lila tried a smile, the same one she used as a child when caught lying. "Mama, we were wrong." "Okay. I should have told you about the wedding. It just got complicated. You know how Vivian is." "Oh, I know exactly how Vivian is," I said, my tone cutting through the steam rising from my cup. "But she didn't stop you from calling. She didn't delete my number. You did." "Mama, please. You posted family complete. Do you remember that?" Her lips trembled. "I didn't mean it that way." "Then how did you mean it?" She didn't answer. The cafe door chimed as someone entered. A few heads turned, curious about the scene unfolding. I lowered my voice but not my tone. "I scrubbed floors so you could wear white gloves. Lila, I cleaned other people's houses so you could live in one that didn't smell like bleach. And when your father died, I buried my grief so you wouldn't see what strength costs." Curious about the scene unfolding. "But you," my voice cracked. Her eyes filled. Mascara, trembling like ink on thin paper. I was trying to fit in. "Mama, and you did. Right into a life where I didn't exist." The cafe had gone quiet except for the rain tapping against the windows. Patrick looked down, muttering, "Maybe we should talk somewhere else." I shook my head. "No, Patrick, this is fine. Public places keep things polite." He glanced toward the counter. Someone's phone camera glowed faintly. Unnoticed. Lila took a breath. "I know I hurt you. But can't we just move on? Start fresh." I reached into my purse and slid a golden envelope across the table. The paper glimmered under the cafe lights. "What's this?" she asked. "My final act of motherhood," I said softly. "You'll understand when you're ready to read it." She hesitated, fingers brushing the seal. "Is this about the inheritance?" I smiled, not cruelly, but coldly. "It's about consequences." Patrick frowned. "That sounds like a threat." "It's not," I said. "It's a promise that I'll stop saving everyone but myself." Leela blinked, tears finally spilling. "You're not the mother I remember." "I hope not," I said. "The woman you remember never told you no." The sound of the rain grew louder, beating against the glass like applause for an invisible performance. I looked at her, the daughter I'd raised, the woman I no longer recognized. "I won't punish you, Lila," I said quietly. "I'll just stop waiting to be chosen." Her face crumpled like a page finally read too many times. "Mama, are you angry?" she whispered. I shook my head slowly. "I'm not angry. I'm free." The sentence hung between us like a verdict. Somewhere behind us, a phone clicked. A bystander, maybe a college student, caught the moment without realizing its weight. Later, that short clip, an old woman saying, "I'm not angry. I'm free," across a rain-streaked table, would make its way online. It would spread quietly, without my name, without context. Just a face, a voice, and a truth that hit too close to home for a lot of strangers. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about viral videos or sympathy. I was thinking about the way my chest felt lighter, as if years of holding my breath had finally ended. Lila wiped her eyes, trying to gather the shards of her pride. "You'll regret this." "I already have," I said. "Every time I stayed silent to keep the peace." Patrick muttered something about leaving, and they stood. For a second, and they stood. Then back. "Can I still call you?" "Of course," I said. "Just don't expect me to wait by the phone." When they left, the cafe felt warmer. I sat there a while longer, watching the rain blur the street outside. My reflection in the window looked like someone I hadn't seen in decades, steady. Sure. Unbroken. Sure. As I rose to go, my dance teacher passed by the window and spotted me. He grinned, tapped his temple, and mouthed, "Proud of you." I smiled back. Outside, the rain had eased into a mist. I didn't use my umbrella. I walked home in it soft, cool, cleansing. I didn't know then that the clip from that afternoon would travel across timelines and phones, captioned, "When Mothers Stop Begging to Be Loved." I didn't know it would make strangers cry, or that people would message saying, "She sounds like my mom." I just knew one thing. Freedom, once claimed, doesn't whisper. It rings. And as the church bells from St. Matthew's Chapel echoed faintly through the damp air, I realized something simple and beautiful. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking away. I was walking toward myself. The next morning,